We had our fake ID cards and found out we caught them and they dumped them in the river out here. We were honest, we never used ours. But he had uncovered this plot. He was an undercover agent.
If we'd spent as much time studying as we had working on that, it would all have been straight A students.
But another good thing, we would nearly always lead the fraternities in grades.
Yeah.
Academics, we would be toward the top every semester.
That was after I left.
I remember, and I've thought about this a lot of times, I sure am glad that house on 1613 West Clinch didn't catch a fire. We all, of course, the bottom was a basement, the second floor, or the ground floor, was where the living area, and then the third floor is where the next floor is where we studied and whatnot, and then we all slept upstairs. And if that thing had ever caught on fire,
But you had the rope hanging right there by the window.
well, we'd have had to jump. We couldn't have got that rope. But I'm just thankful it never did catch on fire, because it was.
When I graduated from high school, I got a new suit. I remember it was a brown gabardine suit, double-breasted. When I graduated from college, that's the same suit that I wore.
I remember one of my friends brought his daughter up here and took 2 vans to bring her up here. When I came, I think I had a pasteboard box, and I had 2 brown paper bags, and I had everything I had in that pasteboard box and those 2 brown paper bags, and that's well most of them.
One of my first memories in the house was Roy Connor limping downstairs and cursing because the furnace was going out.
I was talking about that furnace. Rex Horner was the house manager, and Rex worked with that furnace, just worked with that furnace, and they'd go out, and they'd have to relight it. So Rex made a big sign and put it up with a phone out there, and he said, instructions for lighting furnace in case I'm absent. And you had to turn the page. He said, light match, throw it in, run like hell.
Comment about Max Gregory. He's kept us together over the years, really, with this homecoming thing. And I talked with him last week. He's having some health issues, but he really wanted to be here today. And I think about him quite a bit.
I think another man too is we mentioned him a while ago. Brother Kappa was he spent an awful lot of time, concerned about. Brother Kappa had a way. He wouldn't directly say what he wanted to say. He. I'm saying that very sarcastic and facetiously. I never will forget when homecoming was sitting downstairs and he looked up and he said, "This is the dirtiest place, used a cuss word I've ever seen, And he said, next year when we come up here, this must be cleaned up." And I thought, he's pretty direct, and he was right. It wasn't in real good shape. That was many years ago, Joe, before you guys got a hold of it.
Let me tell you some things about Cup. When I came back to Knoxville in 2002, Dan sort of grabbed me and says, "I want you to take over the house maintenance for me." And we spent lots of time together. Right up until the end of his life. About a week after he had died, I was in a club meeting in Knoxville, and one of the leading businessmen in Knoxville stood up and says, "We have lost the best developer in our history." Said Dan was an honorable, honest man, and he could drive through Knoxville, and I challenge you to do this. You can pick out the buildings he built. They stand out. So Dan was a tremendous person in a lot of ways.
How many of those early people can you remember who are now deceased? I know Gil Thornton is gone, Ben Cockrell's gone.
That's Luttrell.
I don't think Dan Luttrell's dead, is he?
Joe Falls just died here
Did he?
a few weeks ago.
What happened to Bill Mullins, you mentioned?
Last I heard, he was in Florida.
He's in Florida.
And I talked to him 2 or 3 years ago.
I believe Baxter Sanders was in the original group.
Yeah.
Baxter lives just south of me at Troy, Tennessee, and doing very well. I see him quite often. He's still in the farming business. He's semi-retired. His son's handling it. But Baxter had a little heart trouble, but I saw him the other day, and he just seemed to be in real good shape.
He had the car.
Yeah.
I believe two
Nobody know anything about the Dement brothers, you know, there were three of them.
Two of them are still living. One of them came back here last year, or year before, at homecoming.
Gene, did you and I, talking about hitchhiking a while ago, at one time, somebody, and I think it was you, went down to spend the night with me down in Gordonsville at Carthage with my family, and we were hitchhiking and got picked up by a couple that are questionable character. We realized right away. They had their whiskey passing back and forth and wanted us to take a drink, and we wouldn't. It was almost night when we departed. They got off of the Highway 70 and got over into some country roads and pulled into a little all-night service station, and one of them ran in while the other one kept the engine running, and we later were convinced that they robbed the place, and then they came back out and got in the car in this back road, and they started going on down further down. Well, you and I were trying to figure out how we were going to save our lives, and met a police car going the other way. Well, they rolled the windows down, and the other one said, I believe he's turning around. They threw their whiskey out, and we said, we need to get out right down here. Well, they stopped, and we jumped out and found our way back over to Highway 70. And I've always wondered if this place was robbed while we were waiting in the car with those crooks.
Well, I hitchhiked a lot to Carthage because the Heatherly brothers, at freshman year, of course, I got to know you and over there in that great South Stadium, and the Heatherly brothers, some others down there, Bill Kemp, and I hitchhiked down and spent a lot of time with Jim Heatherly and George before he died. But anyway, I made I couldn't go all the way home. It wasn't worth it, but have something time off. I go down to Carthage and spend the weekend with them sometime.
Well,
I never did anything but hitchhike.
George's
Those of you
son
that have not been there lately, Gordonsville is a metropolis now.
has a liquor store.
It's right there, yeah, on Lindy Gill Boulevard.
Yeah.
George had a son that he died several years ago, and George was one of them that stayed in the AGR house when we were in hard times, and he would pay some rent and stuff, and usually put his girlfriend in a hotel somewhere while he waited in the AGR house with us. Anyway, his son just died this past week, and I asked Brother Jim about him. George has been dead several years, and he got he's the one that was my roommate for AGR and then later at South Stadium. First year at UT, he majored in engineering. He made all F's. The second quarter, he made 1 D, and I told him he spent too much time on that one subject. But then he dropped out of school and later became, when he got a divorce from his wife, he said, the old lady broke me up. I had to pay her $14 million, half of what we made. I said, you didn't make $28 million. I cheated her. But then he died a year later after he married the meter maid in Carthage. Her friend told me that she was the fastest millionaire she'd ever known. She got the other $14 million that she inherited from George. But just a little quick story on if you make all too good a grades, you can't be a multimillionaire.
Y'all talk about
George lives about 2 miles, or lived about 2 miles from me. And he knew I got up early, and we spent many mornings on the front porch rocking and talking.
He's the biggest character I have ever known,
Yeah, me
including
too.
all ages.